Ready? Alrighty, it is 5 o'clock. Let's call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Doing a roll call, all voting members are present, minus Councilmember Lundin. I have not heard from him today, so I would assume he'll be here at some point. Is there any public comment tonight? If there is, you're more than welcome to come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Otherwise, if you have any public comment during the meeting, I'll allow that as well. All right, hearing no public comment, we will move on to new business item 1, roundabout project update. Jason, I assume?
Well, all right. I guess we received bids. We're going to be bringing a recommendation to the council meeting here shortly. Some things that kind of came up during bidding that we wanted to bring up to you guys at COW here, primarily is the lighting infill. So Josie put together, we put together a little figure on where the conceptualized lighting infill that, we've had, that we've been trying to complete over the past 10-ish years now, along with the lighting that is proposed with the actual roundabout itself. And on that figure, you'll see there's about 3 spots that have been identified all along that we still want to get filled in. And primarily, I just wanted to bring that to you guys and see if you want to get that included in our project, to have that whole corridor, meeting our desires from 65 to the railroad, essentially, with the lighting that we've, kind of master planned for quite some time.
I think that makes sense. I did have a question. The light just on the corner of the Quick Trip parking lot there, where that box is that gets smacked by semis all the time. So that would be was that northeast? Yeah, is there anything protecting that light from being hit by a semi-trailer there as well and bringing it down into the parking lot? Is there any sort of extra curbing or anything planned there? Or could there be?
So with the new roundabout, that whole pedestal and everything's gone. They're relaying the whole layout of all the existing pipes and everything, and poles. So that proposed one would meet all the required setbacks and clear zones that we would actually have wanted all along for that pedestal. And so these roundabouts are designed with kind of that swath of grass, essentially, at the outermost points to be clear, for that exact kind of purpose, to not have things hit it. And so we would get placed in a spot that isn't going to have those standard vehicle movements trailing or over the curb and hitting it, like that pedestal has.
Okay.
And specifically, that pedestal was a pretty significant pedestal that we've been working on getting relocated. It was major fiber, a lot of things. And so this last 4 months, we've been heavily working with the private utilities to get things moved, to be ready for this roundabout. And that one was a fun one. And I believe they're going to be starting on it shortly to get it out of the way ahead of time. And so at least then, between now and then, we hopefully won't hit it with any more semis.
So that pedestal wasn't up to like compliance on where it was placed, or was
No.
they just not expecting that sort of, trailer hang?
Yeah, so technically, the only requirement of a standard intersection for a private utility, if they choose to put their pedestal there, is just out of the clear zone of the road, which is just 2 feet from the back of curb. And, and so when you're out an inside curve with a significant semi-turning movement, when it's a 90-degree turn, it wasn't a good spot. It happened to be where all their fibers crossed together, where they kind of just needed it. And so getting it moved was, like I say, a challenge, just because there were so many things that put it there specifically. But we're getting it done, so shouldn't be in our way anymore.
So will that be under an access cover type of thing? Or is it totally gonna be moved completely?
Yeah, so I believe the plan is they're putting a new one in, like, significantly further east of where it currently is, like east of even where the roundabout would start. And then they're running a new line, and then they might have a smaller one after the intersection to get back on line where they were. It's kind of moving the crossing further up East Dual instead of straight across out in that, right in that intersection.
Okay.
Are the 3 other lights the same type of light?
No, so all those green ones that you see are like the full major standalone Cobra type lights you'd see almost like on the highway. Those are for specifically like significantly lighting the entrance legs of the roundabout per like the lighting standards and brightness that, you know, is kind of goes along with a roundabout. Whereas those other 3 would be more like what we've been doing on the infills. They'd be more like the light that gets mounted on a pole that exists, or, you know, it still ends up with the kind of the Cobra arm sticking out, but it wouldn't be its own standalone light with base and all that stuff above and beyond the existing utility poles. I think maybe, with all that said, maybe one of those 3 maybe does need its own pole just because of its location. But primarily, when we made that master plan, we were trying to be as cost effective as we could, and it's always cheaper to mount one on an existing pole. So at this point, we're just trying to get it done while we're in there, essentially.
For the additional 3, is there any cost one way or the other as far as doing them together or separately like that? The one says 28, 26, and 30?
No, those are the years that we were gonna fund doing that with our master plan. And so, I mean, doing it now is just gonna get it lumped into the project with our, you know, our current grant, instead of having to go after, you know, one at a time over, what would you say that last year was, 2028?
2030.
2030. So just getting them done instead of doing it over a 5-year period. And
Oh, so this was scheduled for 2030. You just want to move it up into the current?
yeah,
Okay.
just get it done.
Yeah, we have talked about that quite a bit in the last 2 years or so, infill on that, and we did basically a schedule because we wanted to slowly infill it when we had money for it.
Yeah, so I can add that we do budget about $10,000 per year for lighting infill. And so we have many different areas. We have a full city map of where we will infill lights with that $10,000 per year. So that's how that came about.
Sounds good. Any other input or discussion on that?
No?
I think we might as well move it into doing it at the same time if we can.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, E2, Park Dedication Funds discussion.
All right, during the Park and Rec meeting, we had a discussion about what's left over with the funds that we have in the account. I think it's about 300,000, and Jessica wasn't 100% sure at the time, but I'll ask staff right now, do we have any future plans for a park in the next, like, 3 years, for a new park?
We do not have any other future plans for any additional parks.
Okay.
Not in our park comprehensive plan at this time.
Sounds good. So my thought was we start using as much of that money as we can and fill in some of the things that we wanted to do, like fill in the skate park. There's a huge consensus on putting in some pickleball courts over at Bluebird Park. One of the members talked about another dog park. We can look into it. Another one said that these were on the top of the list of the members. Some quiet space within the parks. I don't know, that would have to be looked at a little bit better. I'm thinking maybe if we did that, just to find some places inside the parks to put
A picnic
benches
table.
that are a picnic table or benches out of the way. Also was mentioned that some of the swings need upgrading, or to have a couple of the parks, I forgot the terminology of these swings, but they're like a swing that a parent and a child can swing together. Do you know what they're called?
I don't know what they're called, but they face each other and they can swing back and forth.
Okay.
A tandem
Okay.
swing?
They're
Tandem?
more like they're like one piece It's not like it's a seesaw, but not, yeah, but it's 2 seats, yeah.
And one of the other things that I had mentioned is trees. My thought was to hire a company for maybe 2 days to go around, have Public Works look around for some trees that we can move around the city, because these parks definitely need trees. Bluebird Park could use trees, we could use trees by the amphitheater. I mean, we have plays and stuff there, and there's just no shade, they're beaten in the sun.
So we have been putting $5,000 a year into our general fund for us to add trees to the parks. So we usually do that, and that includes us moving trees around. So like if we have trees, yes, we've done it for the last 3 years now, I believe, yep.
Okay,
So we are slowly chipping away, and I think last year, so this year, I think it's done. I think we added 6 new trees to the parks, so Bluebird and Rum River Meadows. And then the year before that, we actually transplanted some additional trees as well, but we usually get about 5 new trees. And the year before that, we actually transplanted like 9 trees throughout the parks. So,
how big are trees?
like the big pine trees that have illuminate Isani by them, we transplanted
So-
all of those. They're big, big pine trees.
Okay,
So,
There's a gentleman out on County Road 9, it used to be Ray Marshall's field, his name is Steve, I can't think of his last name, but he has mature trees.
sure.
And he gives a discount to developers for those trees, so maybe the city could approach him and say, hey, how much for trees? You know, if we were to commit to 5 a year or something, we'd have to pay somebody to come in with a tree spade, because
Right,
they're big. And I mean, that's the only way you're gonna get a decent shade tree.
Exactly.
The small ones aren't gonna do it. That would be an approach. I mean, I'd gladly go talk to him, I know him well enough. When I get a chance, I'd go talk to him and see what he would do. But we'd have to hire somebody with a tree spade to do it.
sure. It was just, that was my thought, because it seems like we've had a lot of talk about shade for some of the parks. In fact, the survey that we had for the skate park, one of the things on there that they said they would like to see is shade, so a tree or 2 around the skate park would be nice too. I would like to see staff or somebody look into it a little bit, just to see what it would cost to maybe hire a tree company to come out and work for a day or 2, a couple of days. I'm sure we could move a lot of trees in 2 days, because we're not looking at a lot of distance, even if we're getting them out of Legacy Park. Or somebody just mentioned the other day, I haven't been by the dog park, but they said there's so many trees in the dog park that there's probably a few there we could even move, but I have no idea. Are they? They're way too big?
yeah, they're pretty big, but, so we usually just do that within our realm of that $5,000. So that's what we usually go within our budget and say, we found a few trees that we think are movable, are they? We work with, the tree guy Bart that we've been working with. And, he's been reasonable, got us bigger trees than what we've thought we were getting, multiple times, so that's been great. The trees that we planted last year in Bluebird Park, you can't even tell which trees are the new trees unless you know what ones they are, because they look
Sure.
just the same size as the other ones. And so it's probably harder to tell, but I think it's going well. But he also was the one who moved all of those trees for us when we find them. It's just finding the right trees. And now with the ash borer stuff, like avoiding those kind of trees and making sure they're not gonna be diseased. So we're trying not to move any oaks, and it just depends on, what we can find that year. And some years, we know we have trees coming up in a couple of years. That might be a good one coming to move from, for instance, River Bluff Preserve. Like that one has a lot of smaller trees that are growing, and we just don't want to move them quite yet. So we are Matt and I usually go around a couple of times a year and scope out the trees together and pick out the ones we want to keep an eye on and move, so.
Okay, well, my thought was, I'm sure we could probably spend some park dedication funds if we wanted to for shade, because it is shade for the parks. What it comes down to is, What are you guys thinking you want to spend that money on, or do you want to spend it? I'd like to see that fund almost just get dried up. Let's use it, get some of these pet projects off the table. We have a couple people here from Cambridge who's very well versed in pickleball that probably would like to talk to us about that. They'd like to put in four pickle park, or pickle, whatever you call them.
Pickleball courts.
Courts. He was saying four should do the trick. I think we have the space in Bluebird Park to do it. They're willing to make a donation. Right now, I think if I heard correctly, it's like $5,000, but we might be able to get him to pitch in a little more. I was gonna ask Jason about if he was doing a project in the future with a tar project, and he had the machines here, if it would be any cost savings at all if you had some different tar and brought in for that machine, because it's the same machine that lays the roads, it sounds like could lay the court, but it has to be a different type. Would there be any cost savings if we,
Yeah, there can be, you know, if they're obviously in town. I'm in the middle of doing that on a different project in a different town where we had a mill and overlay project, and we kind of asked for pricing for resurfacing a court and essentially they're wanting to give me all entirely different pricing because just access, the section needed to build for these courts is a little thicker than normal, so that they don't heave and move and things.
sure,
And then that mixed design and the finish that needs to happen, so I'm not getting an amazingly better, you know, price because they're in town, but I would say there's gotta be some, you know, that mobilization cost and things that we get, you know, to try and tie something, you know, together. And obviously if it was included in a bid, you know, then they, you know, wouldn't be asking for it as a change order pricing, so, you know, it's something that we could certainly try and tie to a project. Next year, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but I think we only plan a seal coat project next year as opposed to, you know, we're trying to hit all these mill and overlays this year, so.
Aren't we doing Railroad Avenue next year? Mill and overlay? Or reconstruct?
You got me on that.
I'm pretty
I
sure.
feel like it was 2 years, but maybe we were moving it up a year. So maybe that is the one that would be a good one to tie it to.
Okay.
do we have any this fall?
Well, we got a roundabout project that we might be.
True.
An hour.
True.
I, to clarify, I believe the park board talked about putting the pickleball courts in Unity Park. So
Okay,
it's right next to Bluebird Park. Just-
I do have a question
I
for you,
guess we
George.
could, yeah.
I was wondering if you know of any plans that are on the schedule for Fir Street Southwest? Because there's two lots that are zoned as being a park, but they're both vacant. I was wondering what's going on with that.
Is that the Main Street property?
No, Fir Street Southwest?
First Street, we've
For-
talked about it a few times at length, and it's specifically if we're going to, we have to have a plan, we have to have it in place by the 2030 is our timeframe. And it has to have a sport court is what specifically that it has to be from the state. And if we don't do specifically that, then it goes back to the state. And so, so far, previous councils and park boards have said it's not a priority. They've thought there's parks close enough by that it's not at this time, and maybe not enough space to do something like that, but it's up to you guys if you want to move forward with that one.
The park board had discussed, I think, just putting like a Gaga pit in there, something that's very low cost. They're not super popular, but it would meet the obligation for continuing it as a park. I know that was discussed in your park board meeting when I listened to it.
What
A
was it?
Gaga pit?
Like,
Hinnenkamp, I believe, brought it up, putting a Gaga pit or whatever on that property because it's considered like a playing court, and that has very minimal cost. So that would fulfill the obligation that's mandated on that property at a minimal cost.
We'd have to make sure and look into what exactly the resolution says from the state. And it's pretty specific that it's a sport court, so
Sure.
I will have to follow up with them to see what that requires.
so do you guys have any ideas what you would like seen done if we had a list and how to work through it?
So I actually have an idea that I brainstormed and did some math on, that's pretty much the opposite of what you had discussed there. I don't know if it's even possible, but my idea could save taxpayers millions of dollars on long-term spending. Parks are a great amenity. However, we have roughly 2 times the amount of park space per resident that most cities have. I think as a community, there's a lot of benefits to having parks, but there are also a lot of residents that think we have too many parks and spend too much money on parks, especially for long-term upkeep. So when you talk about, spending $100,000 here, $100,000 there, well, you have to think, in 20 years, we're gonna have to spend that money again to replace whatever's put in, So we have long-term costs that aren't covered by the park dedication funds, and where does that money come from? It comes from taxpayers. So, we receive $1,800 of park dedication funds from housing developers per unit. The park dedication money statutorily can only be used for new park amenities or property purchases. Unfortunately, when you buy a new item with the developer funding contributions, this means they'll have to be maintained for many years, like I said. So I would like to look into actually removing the park dedication restriction on developers and maybe implementing our own type of park contribution fund that is only for actual maintenance of those properties. Because at the end of the day, right now, we're gonna spend, you had 700,000 in there. If we spend all 700,000 now, in the future, you're gonna have to spend 700 again, or more. So I would like to look into what the city can do to hedge itself against having long-term maintenance costs, if that makes sense. Versus spending, obviously, we're gonna have to spend all this money right now or at some point, but we have to think of the long term. What if we were to just get rid of the $1,800 per unit of the dedication funds and do our own $1,800 per unit of park maintenance on developers?
The fees that we can charge developers are highly regulated by the state statute, and so that's why the park dedication funds are so directed. We used to have a lighting fund and a few other fees on developers that we actually got in trouble for having and weren't allowed to have. So it'd be something we'd have to dig into deeper
Sure.
to see if it's even allowed, but my guess would be no. Because then cities would be able to just continue to compound fees, and the builders associations are pretty against that. So.
Sure, I agree, and we had talked about this Park Reserve Fund thing many times, and we have always been told it can only be used for certain things. Well, we did some more digging, we found out that wasn't true, and now we've saved a lot of money knowing that. So I believe there's probably a way to do it. That'd be something we'd have to talk to the lawyer about. But, if we can save the residents, just say $50 million over the next 100 years, that's a big deal. If we can just have developers pay that instead of the taxpayers, I think that's a big deal potentially, so. I would like to look into that. Obviously, we have that money we have to spend now, but I think if we're gonna spend it, we have to spend it on amenities that aren't gonna cost taxpayers as much long-term money.
Well, I know the top priority for everybody was upgrading the skate park, at least adding more things into it. A pickleball court would be really nice. It seemed like it's at the top of everybody's list. And just some simple things like some more benches, maybe upgrade swings. And I'd still like to see somehow get more trees in these parks. And let's just drain that 300,000. We have a couple 100,000 coming within the next year and a half that will restock it in case something comes up, a new development, and we want to start saving funds for a new park. But that's up to you guys.
I'm not opposed to what you're saying. I just want to make sure I'd like to see the parks we have to make them better. I don't really necessarily want to see us add parks. I have been told by numerous people from outside the area, they love Isani because of our parks.
Sure.
That's huge. That brings people. When that brings people, that brings more development cost. Bringing funds in. It's a double-edged sword. You're gonna end up with more infrastructure, more maintaining, but the tax base is supposed to help offset that. But I personally, if we could, I'd like to see us upgrade some of these things. Like you said, you get a parent that wants to be on the swing with their kid. Lack of better words, let's just call it a seesaw. Because that's singing back and forth and tipping up, whatever. That's just lack of better words. Absolutely. I'd like to see our parks become more handicap friendly, because that is a big thing. And you'd be surprised. We could probably get grants for bringing in for ADA compliant on these parks. There's a lot of funds in those areas. And it necessarily just comes from the state, it comes from other places. ADA has a lot of power, a lot more than you think. And, you know, I guess those are all things we can look into. You know, I guess let's get more clarification how that money can be spent. There was a lot of that discussion was, it was supposed to be for building more new parks, when we found it was for adding new amenities. It wasn't for direct replacements of things, but it was adding amenities. So by you know, changing a swing out, to me, that's an amenity. That's the way I look at it. It's not going out and buying a new, you know, leather strap with chains on it. That's not the same thing. It's a complete different animal. So I'd like to see us take that money and use it towards what we have in our parks now, instead of trying to develop a bunch of parks in the future. If we have another development that's, say, on the other side of 65, and they need a park over there, that's where some of that money will have to get funneled into it.
Sure.
It'll have to, because they're not gonna cross 65 to come over here.
That's why I asked that question, if we have any more developments going in that may need a park because we're putting in so many units in that
But
area.
every time they do a phase, that's more money that they put in the park dedication fund. So it's not like they do phase one, they give X amount of dollars. They do phase two, they give another X amount of dollars. So it's not like it's just, you know, 4 phases, they're gonna collect that 4 phases worth of money. They're gonna collect that as each phase goes. So, you know, where Representative Gordon lives, I don't know what, I think the only park that's over there is from the Science Academy, isn't it? You know, and that's a long ways from where he's at. You know, there should have been something else put over there to make it easier for, you know, people with kids. I don't wanna walk 8, 10 blocks to go take a kid to a park, you know? I mean, I got a park right behind my house. So when you brought up quiet areas, dude, they're a block and a half from my house. I hear them till 10:30 at night screaming in there. So it's kinda hard to get that quiet area. What are you gonna do? You gotta build a structure so there's no noise around it. That's a hard sell. So that I'm not for, but I'd like to see us do more for our parks. Bluebird Park example, I've always been a strong advocate. Bluebird Park is our showcase park. Let's make it that. Let's do everything we can to make that a destination for people to go.
I think on the quiet areas, I think they were thinking more like Legacy Park, maybe down a trail, you know, 6 blocks, throw a bench in, or down by the Rum River, something like that. I'm not sure the exact intent of that. They were talking about a rock park. Jeff, do you have any priorities?
I would like to use those funds as best as possible to do replacement costs that we already have set going forward that would come from taxpayers in the future. And I've said that with this Bluebird thing. That's why I really wanted to add this new amenity in Bluebird, because the last place that was breaking. We had 2 or 3 slides or the tubes that were all broken. We did not get good coverage when it was all boarded up. After so many years, the plastic just gets brittle and kids go in there and they're rough and they broke a lot of stuff. But if we can use some of these park dedication funds in the future to replace some of these pieces of equipment, that's what I want to use it for.
Okay.
Just
So
think about this. $300,000 accrued takes probably about 5 years, unless we have heavy development. But eventually, the city of Isani is going to be out of developable area, and then we're going to have $100 million worth of park stuff, and no money coming in, or whatever it is, to pay to replace those things, like Jeff had just said, you know. And we've been able to get creative with, you know, if you replace a slide, but it's a different style of slide, I would consider that a new amenity because it's a different slide altogether. Sure. I think, you know, draining the account, I think that, you know, historically, politicians have done that, but it sets the city up for failure. I think, you know, just spending it because it's there is a bad approach myself. I think it gets us into a long-term issue. Eventually, we're gonna run out of development funds. It's just a reality of what we have. So I think we should hang on to the money, unless it's something that obviously makes sense. I think the skate park money makes sense. The pickleball might make financial sense. But if you look at what we just spent on that new playground set, I mean, what happens in 5 years if we gotta put a playground across on east of 65 and there's $1 million? You're never gonna have that money, so then you have to tax people for it.
I think we're gonna be close in 5 years. I mean, even if we spend this 300, I think we got another, I heard at least 87 coming in really soon. Year's not over. It all depends on development, how fast development is.
But we are putting in a park, a natural park over by the Science Academy in that neighborhood. So there is a playground going in over there, but Public Works will build out each set as they have time.
I like that idea more than the manufactured playgrounds. You get so much more bang for the buck. I mean, you
I
look
like
at,
it. I really
look
like
at,
that park.
when that park's done, you're gonna be able to look at that and think, wow. And then you go look at, other playgrounds and it's like, wow, that playground's $300,000, $400,000 when we just built these natural ones for $30,000. I think if we can focus on cost-effective amenities and not the most fanciest, bestest amenity ever, you know what I mean? I think that's our duty here for taxpayers. And, you hear a lot of people, I get calls all the time, why do you keep putting this money into these parks? Why? Obviously, the parks are enjoyed by a majority, but I think the majority also thinks we spend too much money on them. So you gotta walk that balance. I don't think we should drain the accounts necessarily, but that's just my opinion.
So if you came up with a number for an upgrade for the skate park, what are you thinking? I'd like to, I have a six-figure number in my mind. We have a lot of space there, and we've upgraded the equipment, and we maintained it, but
So I had someone from the BMX reach out to me about, obviously, the pump track stuff, and we've talked about that before. And I like the idea of, this is just something I'm throwing out. Maybe we do like a match if they want something like that, and they can raise funds for, say, $50,000. Then we'll put a matching amount of funds into the skate park area or something like that. Just get a little more creative with not exactly taxpayer dollars, but the people that are going to use it are going to be the ones that are going to donate. So just an idea like that, or I don't know, I think putting 6 figures into the skate park would be hard pressed, personally. Even though it's an awesome amenity, I think there's a better way to get that money.
okay, that's one opinion.
Right, let's hear it.
Your thoughts?
6 figures seems like a lot for skateboard stuff when they work on flat ground too. I mean, that's the coolest kind of skating was the stuff that was just on the street on flat ground, but
Sure. I just know it doesn't buy you much. 100,000 doesn't buy you a lot of.
Nick, did you see about a year ago, we talked about a pump track and like concrete features at the skate park, and that was like $700,000 to $1 million. It's unbelievable.
It is.
And the thing is, they know that government will just continue to do these things. So we have to get creative and fight against that to do our own things, Right now, these companies are marking up stuff as much as 50, 60% just because we're a city. We have to be creative with our money that we have. So did you reach out to that company that I had sent you on Facebook?
No, because I wanted to have a discussion with you all before I decided to call him and waste any time, or at least have a dollar figure. I mean, if we bring him up here and have him take a look at it and see if he maybe want to reconfigure the whole park and then add some more pieces to it and, give us a number of whatever we can decide we may want to put into that park, then maybe he'll have a better direction on what to do with it. So, I mean, we can see what he can do for 50 grand, but I'm thinking that's only gonna buy you maybe a couple more pieces.
His stuff looked pretty reasonable, I thought, cost-wise, compared to what we've been getting on stuff.
It did. If we went, it looks like he has different levels. And I think if we're gonna do it, we're gonna buy the best level to put out there, so we don't have to worry about maintaining it.
I think he called it like armor plastic or something like that.
Gator.
Gator back or something, yeah.
I can have that conversation. I mean, can we come to a consensus maybe of what to put aside for the skate park? just start there?
I think your best bet is let's figure out what we want to do with it, and let's go to this extreme and scaling it back and see where it's at. We can't, it's kind of hard to throw money at something when you don't know what it's all gonna be.
Should I tell them like something like 50,000, 75,000, and 100,000, and just then see what we can get or what he could come up with, and then make a decision from there?
That'd be the way I would do it, is you're gonna have, I mean, you can't make a decision on not knowing what it's gonna cost.
Sure.
That's like telling somebody to build me a house, I don't care what it costs, and when you get done, it's $3.5 million and you can't cover it. I mean, you gotta know what you're doing before you step into it.
And I can reach out to him, but we would still have to put it out to bid, right? Is, Josie, I could reach out to him and have him come up and look at it, but we would still have to put it out to bid.
We wouldn't actually meet the requirement to do state bid on it if it's under 175,000. However, we would have to put it out for quotes, yes, and receive multiple quotes. At least 3 would be ideal.
But it would get us a baseline.
Sure, okay.
So here's a question for you, time out, trying to focus on maintaining what we already have. When my daughter had soccer last year, every time we had any amount of rain, the soccer fields would flood.
The what was?
The soccer fields would flood. If there was any amount of rain, a bunch of the fields would be completely saturated with standing water. I mean, focusing on something like that, I think would be of importance as opposed to just throwing money at
How long do they stay flooded for?
during soccer. I mean,
So it could be days
af-
like. it
I
could
couldn't
take-
tell you that, but like if it rained that morning or afternoon when we get there in the evening for soccer, it would be like completely saturated with standing water on it, on a couple of the fields.
Has staff noticed a problem with standing water at the soccer fields?
The soccer association is the one who's responsible for the field, so
Okay.
I haven't heard any complaints from them regarding that. We lease the fields to them and they take care of all of the, games and maintenance throughout the summer.
We don't have any implied or explicit costs with that soccer complex, correct?
No, we do not. We lease the land for $1 per year,
Okay.
technically, and they're able to use it exclusively. There's an agreement.
As as far as maintenance, like, that would include grading, or that's just include like mowing and fertilization and treatment?
Anything that they'd like to do to the fields would be their responsibility, the way that the agreement is drafted
Okay.
and written. There's no drain tile out there that I'm aware of or anything like that. I'm not aware of any requests to put anything in or anything like that, but they would be able to modify it with council approval if they were interested in doing such of a thing.
I think that'd be a pretty big cost. I think they just probably need to aerate a little lot more often, so the water has somewhere to go easier. So as far as do you guys have any other input on the BMX stuff? Or the skate park stuff?
I guess I would like to focus on cheaper stuff for the skate park, not like the cheap equipment, but not a pump track.
Right.
Because that gets expensive really quick. I could see expanding into more, I think the BMX wants more bike stuff, whatever equipment that they would need for that, but I guess I don't want to sink too much into a pump track type of deal.
I wasn't leaning towards a pump track anymore because of the cost, but, you know, we stepped away from looking at a modular type pump track, which was affordable. And I don't remember the exact number of the module type. I guess we'll talk to the skate park guy and see what he says about it and see what kind of thing he can put in there. Would you be willing to reach out to BMX if we come up with a figure and see if they'd be willing to partner with us on something like that?
I have a meeting tomorrow. I can see what their idea.
Okay.
Do they do a lot of fundraiser type stuff already over there?
They do stuff for themselves. I think they do like 50-50 raffles sometimes, but they mainly rely on doing camps and for different leagues and stuff. They rely on their food and beverage and their just regular fees to be a part of the organization. So I can ask them all these questions tomorrow, see what they say.
Okay. How about for pickleball? You guys want to talk about the pickleball stuff?
I'd like to get another, or see if staff can get another quote on a asphalt type pickleball court. Because we had some quotes, but it was a tile court and they're really expensive. And talking to the Cambridge folks, they were saying theirs is tar up there and they work just fine. I'm gonna guess there's a lot less expense to that. So maybe reach out, get a quote, see what we're looking at even for 4 courts.
Yeah, if you'd like to come on up and just state your name and address to the record, I'd love to hear from you. Anything you got to say. Can you? Yeah, yep, come on up. Yep, I don't know if it's on. It's on, okay. Just state your name and city for the record. Press it one more time, maybe.
I think I turned it
There
on.
you go, yep.
Okay, my name's Patricia Peterson, and I live in East Bethel.
Okay.
Just, address 23450 Monroe Street Northeast, just like Cooper's Corner there. On the radio the other day, I heard something about Minnesota being like first in the nation for good places to live. And one of the reasons that they gave is because Minnesota has so many parks. And they said, like, I can't remember what percentage, 95% of the population lives within 10 minutes walking distance of a park. So I think it's great that Isani has so many parks. Also known is that pickleball is the fastest growing sport in America.
It is.
And you're gonna get a lot of people coming here. We don't have pickleball courts in East Bethel. So I drive up to Cambridge all the time. The next closest is Ham Lake down on 65. You're gonna get a lot of people here. You talked about making, not spending the money or taxes for the people. You're gonna make a lot of money at Quick Trip and Subway and Dairy Queen and all the different businesses that they're gonna go by as they go to pickleball because it's really popular. And there's 8 courts up in Cambridge, and we are already overly filled. And you think it's just older people, but it's not. Now we're being invaded by all those young kids. So I'm gonna vote for pickleball. You're just gonna get a lot of people into your city, so.
Do you know, so I've seen, I think we did it at Academy Park where you just paint the lines for a pickleball court using an existing tennis court. Have you played on something like that?
I have. It's not ideal because the nets are actually too high for pickleball. So it's not as fun, and it's different. You're just gonna get a lot more people if they're dedicated pickleball courts.
But is it because of the surface, or is it just the nets?
Just the nets. I mean, it can be confusing because you're putting lines on a tennis court, so you're adding the lines because it's a little bit smaller. A pickleball court's about 2/3 the size of a tennis court, but it's mainly the net.
So if we were to figure out a way to have an adjustable net height-wise, would that potentially solve that issue at all? I mean, it's hard to justify when you can send a guy out there for free to paint the lines versus dropping 50 grand on a court.
I don't think it's gonna be the same. I just
Okay.
know that you're gonna get a lot of traffic through Isanti if you put in pickleball courts. It's so popular. And I mean, literally, we would, in the wintertime, if it gets to be 45 degrees, they're like, hey, anybody wanna bring a shovel and shovel off the court and bring a portable net and play? It's a good season.
Thank you.
Do you have a minute to speak?
Come on up and just state your name and address for the record, please. Thank you guys for coming up.
You do some maintenance on the Cambridge.
My name is Pete Fell, and I live 29146 Partridge Street Northwest. And I am the maintenance director for Cambridge Area Pickleball Association, we call it CAPA. And we had 4 courts added to the existing 4 courts several years ago. And that's how Cambridge did it, is when they did updates on their road work, they brought the equipment over to save on time of transferring equipment. Obviously, the mix is a little different, the asphalt, and you have to have the right specifications to have a good court. Asphalt for sure would be cheaper. Also to maybe consider is not only the size of the court, which is actually 44 by 20, you need space and borders around that court for different reasons. 4 courts, designated pickleball courts would be my recommendation. But if you really want to bring some people in, I would recommend maybe thinking about 6, because now if you have 6, you can now start having pickleball tournaments. That will really bring people in from all over the areas. Forest Lake, come and play at Cambridge, East Bethel, I mean, all your neighboring towns. You don't know where they come in. Actually, I get groups together sometimes, and they come in from Minneapolis, from all over, you know, just because we organized good play, and they will come. It'll be used, maybe not all day long, but there's usually, because, you know, the heat of the day or whatever, but in my mind, I drove by it several times, south of the BMX area, that big field right there, beautiful place. There's no trees in the way. There would be really no maintenance for far as sweeping debris off from, you know, trees and stuff they do. Just maybe build a little bridge over that little creek or whatever. You got the parking lot already there, you know, so you don't have to worry about that. But that'd be a wonderful place. And it's away from residential area. Some of the main concerns over there in Cambridge is it's Central Green Park. I mean, there's a lot of residential area right around in there. And, but we don't really get a whole lot of complaints. And you actually have to be fairly close to the courts to actually hear the ping, 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 you know, whatever, the pickleball and the paddle and stuff like that. But I think that's a wonderful place to put some courts up there. Of course, you'd have to have fencing and stuff. Okay, now, we had a meeting, Kappa had a meeting, and we are willing to donate $5,000 to Isani for pickleball. Has to be designated for pickleball though, for whether, like windscreens or something, benches around the, you know, pickleball facility or whatever, but only for pickleball. Okay, we will do that. There's all kinds of designs. There's all kinds of things that, you know, you could, you know, figure out how to construct 6 courts or 4 or whatever. But I would say a minimum of 4, because we had 4 in Cambridge. We added another 4. It's full. It's full. And now, well, we wish we had maybe 2 more, you know, and that's 8 courts. So they did want to put a spot in there for some of the kids to do basketball hoop and stuff and whatever, and that was fine. But people will come, and they'll come to all the businesses. But like I said, you know, the city of Isani, if they wanted whatever, can get involved in handling some tournaments and stuff like that. There's all kinds of different ways of doing that, and, you know, concessions or something or whatever, or, you know, everybody usually, you know, to be in the tournament, there's a fee, you know, $25, $30, $40, you know, whatever you come up with, and that proceeds can go to Isani or whatever it needs to be going through, you know. But and, you know, you can have our own association too, nonprofit organization or whatever. There's a lot of benefits, and like Patricia said, it's the fastest growing sport in the nation. It's going like crazy, you know, and a lot of people, you know, all ages are just on fire for pickleball, you know. So, and you can do clinics, and it's just endless of what you can do with it. So
Great.
I think it'll be money well spent.
Okay, I have a question for you, if that's okay. Do you know the rough cost of a 4-court, 6-court, or 8-court pickleball, all included with the fence. From some benches, if you were to just throw a number out there for 4 or 8.
I do not.
Okay.
I wasn't involved in any of the financial part of it, or, you know.
How high a fences do you need?
Well, it needs to be all the way around.
4-footers or 6-footers, 10-footers?
Oh, how tall?
Yeah, how tall?
I think we have, let's see, maybe 8 or 10 feet. Because we have windscreens, I believe, that are 8-foot windscreens, and there's still some more fence.
Do you know how long the average life expectancy of a court like that would be?
Well, it's depends on, you put up some signs and have some strict rules, and, you know, like kids coming on bikes and their skateboards and making marks and stuff like that, but you have a good coating on it. It should, before it gets resurfaced, it should be good for 4, 5, 6 years. Depends on how good the contractor is and what they do. And, you know, and how they do that. One thing we were kicking around in Cambridge was lighting, because there's no lighting there, and so we kind of asked a few lighting contractors and stuff, and Cambridge wasn't really willing to work with us, but in the summertime, it's light until 9 or 8:30 or whatever, and that's okay. So I don't even think you need to do any lighting, you know. But that whole area right there by the BMX is wide open. Be perfect for the area, I believe.
That is used for camping and parking and stuff for the BMX events. Yep.
So I have a question on that 4 to 6 years. So what do you see developing on the surface that you think it needs to be redone every 4 to 6 years?
The sealer, or the topping coat, just kind of wears away a little bit, and then you can just resurface it.
Is that similar to a tennis court surface? Okay.
Right, yeah. And usually when there's a tennis court and a pickleball courts come into, usually the net for the tennis court will be like a backstop, and there'll be a pickleball court on either side of that, with plenty of room around the borders. But that's kind of important to have at least 4 to 5 feet in between each court, because there's different things that, you know, you don't have to have the ball go over the net, you can go around the net. So if the ball comes to the side and the player runs out there to go around, and you need some space there, you know, stuff like that. But lots of information about pickleball courts on YouTube.
Sure. Any other questions from the guys? Well,
I volunteer my services at you know, doing what I do. And I mean, we have, the way our courts are configured, I put roll-away gates so the balls stay in your area and stuff, and we do a bunch of stuff. We have people volunteer their work.
Great. Well, thank you for your input. Much appreciated.
Well, if we're gonna look into a quote, we should definitely look at the difference between a 4-court and 6-court.
I agree.
The 6-court sounds like definitely would be the way to go, especially if we can bring tournaments up here and bring more people into the community, and, yeah, spend more money, it'd be great. Sure.
I thought I had been told or heard that there was a local business that was starting pickleball courts. Is that?
There is
Wintergreens.
Wintergreens.
They have 1 court.
I was told it hasn't been used very much, but they have specific hours and rules. But I don't know, I've never seen anyone playing over there, and I live over there, but I don't know.
Okay.
Stephanie, do you know how much a tennis resurface costs, roughly? I know we had talked about.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I'll put it in the admin update.
Okay, and if we do get a quote, I would like to see a maintenance cost, because that's one of them things I just mentioned. If we spend this money every 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is, we're gonna have to spend thousands of dollars again and again and again with no contributions from anybody but taxpayers. I think it's a great idea. I wish we had more money in the account, and maybe could have spread it out a little more than we did or have, but
I'm wondering what the maintenance cost is exactly, and maybe we can make they have a nonprofit in Cambridge. You know, if we build it, if we can get them to be responsible and fundraise for the maintenance. Just a thought, do you think something like that would work? But. It could be brought up to the meeting. Sure.
But the existing forecourts that we have up there, we haven't resurfaced that in years.
Okay,
But I know there's other courts around the metro that I go to and play at as well too. Cause I'm known through a lot of metro area venues. But it's just a wear and tear, and a lot of it is juveniles, abusing the area, the space or whatever, sometimes.
so,
But, and then also, in the wintertime, I know she mentioned it a little bit, shoveling snow off of it, that doesn't help the court at all. The surface of it, but yeah, we haven't resurfaced it, and it's still in really good shape, and it's, I don't know how long it's been. 9 years, 10 years or whatever, we haven't resurfaced that at all,
so
still in good shape.
Stephanie, with Academy Park, that was up for resurfacing, it has some wear down, and I didn't think we should do it yet, but do you know how long that's been there with the current surface? It doesn't look that old. Okay.
Maybe around 2016, I could look it up, but I did have pulled up Mayor Council. This is a dated quote, but when we had gotten a quote to resurface Matson, which is 2 tennis courts, that was $11,880, and that's a resurfacing. And that had some major cracks in there that wouldn't go away, and that was with one color. So that's almost 10 years ago, but just to give an idea, I can look up and see if I can find the Academy Park here.
So that was a quote from 10 years ago?
From 2016.
Okay, so you could assume at least double.
On
On a tennis
double-
court, a tennis courts, yep,
A double tennis court at
Yep.
Matson.
sure. Yep.
I have one more question for you, George. Was Whisper Ridge brought up recently, I thought? And was that founded or unfounded as far as whether it's being used or?
It is being used. We did surveys on that, and I don't remember the exact statistics, but it was heavily used. Myself and Councilmember Holmgren went out there and door knocked too, and it was heavily used every day in the summer, they said. So that park should not be going anywhere, and that's what we decided on that last year.
But there was also a lot of people that didn't even know it was there, so I
Yep.
think some signage would be good.
Right.
Or some type of flyers or something, I don't know.
Pickleball would not be popular there, though. It's right in people's backyards. People's fences literally adjoin to,
Well, I was talking about, if it wasn't being used, it's set up as a tennis court and a basketball court, so if it's already making percussion noises, changing the percussion noises, but if it's already being used and utilized, then no point in.
Probably getting used for other than basketball and tennis too, if there's kids over there, skateboards, like he said. So we'd have to, I think the direction we should go with the pickleball, it never hurts to get quotes, and it never hurts to look at the maintenance programming. Then we have to look at maybe, like you suggested, if it's a nonprofit, they have a nonprofit, we let them handle that aspects of it, and they can be in control of opening and unlocking any locked gates to keep other things out.
well, if
Academy Park was built in 2017.
okay.
if we upgrade the skate park, it might keep the kids away from that other large paved surface if we build a couple more courts.
Could we use that large paved surface, that concrete surface already there, and just put up fencing and make that into a pickleball court?
About that.
I mean, at least then there's one or two, and,
From my understanding, concrete alone by itself is a fast pickleball court, so you'd want to do some type of
sort of coating.
surfacing on it. But then we just also, there's lighting there, but just keeping a buffer between the skate park and those. It's up to you guys.
yeah, if you could come on, do you have much to say? If so, okay.
That being said, you can have a stable surface of any kind, concrete,
So it's like a mat? Okay,
I think campgrounds sometimes use those.
okay. That's good to know.
Might be
mean,
room at the very end of that
that's-
skateboard park to put one in.
That's what I'm
temporarily
thinking.
with his thought, but we'd have to add fencing, but I sure hope there's enough room still to do some add-on for the skate park.
Sure.
I think it's something we have to further address and look at.
Sure.
I mean, the concrete's already there, yeah, but that's the biggest cost of the whole project.
Okay, so it looks like the way you want to go forward, or the consensus would be to get the guy out that is really familiar with the skate parks, have him look at it, see if there's a reconfiguration and addition to it we can do for 50, 75, and 100,000. And then in the meantime, we'll look at getting quotes for a 4 and a 6 quart pickleball. And we'll put all the rest of this on the back burner until we hear something, and then decide if we want to add a few swings in or benches or
I
something.
think we can talk about that later tonight, too, if you want to talk about it more. It's 6:01 right now, so we should probably get a motion to, what's the word? Motion to recess, so we can go into the planning commission meeting.
Motion to recess.
Second.
Motion to recess by Councilmember Lundin, second by Councilmember Heeman. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We are recessed, and we will pick up planning commission momentarily.